opposite, inverse position?
Well, under the original concept of the Constitution, the people themselves were in charge, and basically you and I could only go to each other in court if you or I could prove the other had committed them a harm. Same thing with a criminal act. There was a time when there had to be a victim to be a crime. Now we have all multitudes of crimes that have no victim. The differentiation in these are the malum in se crimes, which are crimes that are crimes in and of themselves, such as murder, for instance. That's a crime against humanity in and of itself. Then you have the traffic citations, where there is no victim, there is no one harmed, and yet a crime has been committed. Some states, they're civil, but here in Texas, they are criminal actions. Now, as far as what that goes, there's lots of things that these statutes they govern us under have attempted to do to circumvent our constitutional protections. For instance, Texas law is written into the Transportation Code with the presumption that you have waived all of your rights. For instance, Chapter 601, where you have to deal with the financial responsibility requirements, the language in that very specifically states the burden of proof to prove their innocence is now on the accused. They don't have to prove you're guilty. They have already presumed by statute you are in fact guilty as charged.
So this runs directly 180 degrees according to all basic English, Anglo-Saxon, common law, the Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence. People claim they're these red-blooded Americans. Yeah, take people's rights. It's red-blooded. No, it's the opposite.
That's correct. 601.053 Texas Transportation Code will spell that out plainly. Now, that is completely inverse to the way it's supposed to work. The Code of Criminal Procedure says very clearly, an individual's presumption of innocence shall never be tarnished by the state. It cannot be tarnished, yet the statute specifically does that. It also states in the Code of Criminal Procedure that every person is presumed innocent until proven guilty. The statutes in the Transportation Code completely belie that. The presumption is always one of guilt over innocence under those statutes.
What about this lie that it's a privilege to drive and you've got to take the tracker chip in your car, you've got to have the license, you've got to have the registration, you got to learn how to lick boots?
This is where we get into the actual study of law and the difference in terminology. You have to be very particular in the terminology you use, in the fact that when the law defines a word, term, or phrase, it is an absolute certainty that word, term, or phrase is not being used in the common English sense. So it has.
You got to go to Black's.
Well, it depends. The Supreme Court begins with Bouvier's, and if the term is not defined in Bouvier's 1856 edition, then they will rely on Black's. The states rely almost exclusively on Black's law. But normally, if the statute defines the term, that definition is what controls over Black's or over anything else. Second to that, if the term is not defined, you can go to Black's, and if it's not defined in Black's, then you can go to case law. Then if it's not defined in case law, you can go to the Standard English Dictionary. Those are basically the hierarchies you have to follow to determine whether or not a word or phrase.
And notice in law, it's always the older is the more powerful. You look at all this new crud they just make up. It's just stuff to confuse the cops and magistrates so they'll carry out the fraud. It's a hoax. Like Rick Perry saying it's the law, you got to take Gardasil. And people finally went, there is no law. What? And he said, yeah, there is. I said so.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's just flim-flam.
It very much is. And so in reference to your question, when you use the term drive, when you're driving...
That brings in commercial.
Correct.
Is the right to locomotion or travel.
Correct. When you use that term, then what you asked me in the question, yes, you must submit. You must submit because...
That's why I said drive, because I wanted to point out that, well, oh, it's a privilege to drive. Well, you know what? We, under common law, have said under commerce, driving this locomotive or this big whatever, we've decided that, yes, that can be regulated because it's commerce.
Well, not only commerce, but the commerce itself has to present an inherent public danger or interest that they can regulate. For instance, let's take these trucking companies, especially the ones coming out of Mexico. They're neither safety inspected, nor are they properly maintained, so on and so forth. You've got an 80,000-pound plus missile running down the highway at 85 miles an hour that may blow tires at any time, blow an engine at any time.
And so that's how it was allowed in, also so it can be taxed because the trucks are tearing up the roads.
Correct.
Then they simply move that on to the general public.
That's correct. The laws were taken and reinterpreted without actually being changed, by the way. The law has not changed. Only the way it's being applied has been changed. They have taken these words and phrases with these common meanings, and they have readjusted them to cover an area they were never meant to cover. And you only find this out when you go back and do a historical study of all the previous versions.
Sure, I mean, it's one of the most adjudicated issues that I've seen, yes, that the right to travel, the right to mobility, and it's not just here, it's across cultures, even in really tyrannical systems, that's got to be a basic right, or you're living in a huge prison.
That's true. And the first Transportation Act of any kind in Texas was originally enacted in 1917. When you start with that act and you move forward, let's consider that the automobile came along in the late 1800s. So from there up until 1917, there was no regulation on automobiles of any kind in Texas. Now, if you're an owner of an automobile at that time and the state turns around and writes a law that says you can no longer use your automobile without our consent, that runs afoul of the constitutional right to own and use property. All right? You purchased it. It belongs to you. Now the state's telling you that unless you get their permission, you can't even use it. There's nothing correct and right about that.
Well, the power to tax is the power to destroy. George Washington realized corporations, companies in England didn't like the competition. They were putting regulations and taxes in and admitting it was meant to shut down their competition. I mean, I heard Jack Abramoff, the famous corrupt convicted lobbyist, on MSNBC last night when I was driving home at about 10:30. They were re-airing it. And he said, listen, I'm doing what everybody else does, but yes, it's criminal. But he said, I was paid every day, hundreds of millions of dollars overall, to go lobby government to shut down corporations' competition.
Right.
I mean, and the general public, you tell them this, and they think, oh, that's not happening. No, it's very, very simple. And Google's been lobbying that humans not even be able to drive cars. They've already got a bunch of states letting them drive robot cars everywhere. And they're going to argue they're safer and then try to force us to then drive in their cars. They're just destroying our freedom and rendering us slaves to them by having government come out with an unconstitutional edict.
Right. And think about that kind of thing with the robot cars. How does that work when it has to travel long distances between cities and so on and so forth? The entire purpose of this system, the way it's been implemented now, is to go from its original intent of regulating commerce that could be a public hazard. And so they're there to protect the public from that commerce and what it could entail. And they've taken it and shifted over into a way to control the general population. If you want to use the road, come get a license from us. If you want to use your car, come get it registered and licensed by us. Now that you have our license, we can revoke it on a whim. You can no longer use your car.
A license turns a right into a privilege.
Correct.
Now, let me stop because we're out of time. I'll have to have you back for a more extensive report in the future. You can even bring some slides if you'd like. We can sit here and demonstrate it for people because I know your research is right on. There's a lot of pro se people out there that put out a lot of disinformation, most of it through ignorance. It's not intentional. But I've done the basic research, and I know your information's spot on. We'll definitely have you back. I want you to spend about 60 seconds talking about the police themselves and their duty versus how many of them are actually consciously thugs versus just being manipulated like the general public. And then also tell us about the Rule of Law radio show and website.
All right. I honestly believe that the majority of police officers have good intentions in what they do. They are there to serve the public. And I talk to many of them in every capacity, federal, state, local, you name it. Most of them are interested in knowing the truth, though they don't really know what they could do with it even if they learned it. Basically, they don't want to be the lone individual in the shark-infested waters. That's the major problem for most of them. Yeah, they wake up, but how do we put it into place? It's a personal choice, guys. That's really all there is to it. You must make the choice to stand up for what you know is right. I, as an individual citizen, had to do it. You gentlemen have to do it. You're the only ones that can. I honestly believe the more we spend time communicating with them on a one-on-one basis, the public versus the law enforcement, they will stop seeing us the way they're being trained to see us, which is as the enemy, as the potential perp, as the potential criminal. We have to get them back into the public swell rather than just this educated law enforcement swell where they remain isolated from us and kept at a distance. That's one thing. We do have a Monday night show that's all about traffic on ruleoflawradio.com. You can listen to us over the internet no matter where you are just by going to the website. I talk about traffic issues, Texas law, due process, everything related to the fighting of any type of traffic citation, city ordinance violation, so on and so forth. It's numerous things we try to cover, and our job as we see it is, like you, to take the overall picture, put it together in a way that people can understand, and help them along the steps.
Exactly. Well, Eddie, you're doing great work. I'm tired of watching folks flounder around. The Bible says the people perish for lack of knowledge, and you're bringing a lot of knowledge. People can also find on that website about your local seminars you put on every weekend at Brave New Books in downtown Austin. I'd like to come down sometime and film it and put it on PrisonPlanet.tv. I think that's a good... Well, I might send McBreen down there then soon to tape one of those and put it out on the web because it's very important, and we're here to bring light to the world. Eddie Craig, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex.
Appreciate it. Well, I want to thank the crew, and I want to thank all of you, the supporters of PrisonPlanet.tv, my radio show, the news websites, INFOWARS.com. This is all about giving Ron Paul a platform. He said 4 years ago he got half his support in his first presidential run from this show. It's about bringing on Eddie Craig. It's about bringing on so many countless other people, bringing different knowledge at different angles as we try to expose the corruption. I mean, for a while, they ate around the Bill of Rights and Constitution's edges. And now they're attacking the very core of it, going, yeah, we'll just spy on you without warrants. Yeah, we're going to arrest you if you videotape us in public, but we're going to videotape you in your house. Yeah, we're going to set up warrantless checkpoints on the highways. I mean, this is martial law. This isn't just a country having its basic liberties overthrown. This is a dangerous, fast-moving cancer. And to all the people that serve this system out of ignorance, out of peer pressure, or out of actual evil intent, you can't make a deal with this system. It is predatory. It is a black hole. It is destructive. You've got to figure out that it's better statistically, plus you'll feel better just in your heart and soul, to stand against evil. A lot of us work really hard to bring this information to the public, and we've had huge success. So we invite you to research, become more informed, and then start reaching out to others. Every person you wake up or even get to think a little bit and turn 1 degree from tyranny and ignorance towards liberty is a huge tectonic victory that the globalists feel. That's why they're moving so fast right now, is because they know the sleeping giant that is for humanity is rising. Lord willing, we'll see you back tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Central, for the next edition of InfoWars Nightly News. And, of course, we'll see you on the radio/TV show 11 to 2 Central, also at PrisonPlanet.tv, but on the audio streams and local AM and FMs. Don't forget, this ends at the end of the month, 15-day free trial for subscribers to see all the films, my book, Paul Watson's book, expanded extras, the show every night, the archives of it all. The special reports are incredible. The Charlotte Iserby Skull and Bones one, they're all up there right now at PrisonPlanet.tv or InfoWarsNews.com. Again, great job to the crew. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.